Welcome to the Empowering Perspective Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Dwyer, and I'm excited to have a well-rounded, well-versed individual who has a plethora of experience and who is doing a lot of great things within our community. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our guest for today's show, Command Sergeant Major retired Lamont Christian. Welcome to today's show, Sergeant Major Christian.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the invite, and I'm really glad to be here.
It's an honor to have you, man. And I'm telling you, when you were referred to me, I was just in awe when you start sharing some of the things that you were doing. So if you don't mind, would you kind of like introduce yourself to the audience and then just kind of give them a little bit about your background leading up to this conversation here?
Yeah, so I'm Lamont Christian. I served in our military, specifically the Army, as an infantryman for over 33 years. My career culminated after serving just about in every infantry division and deploying ever since Desert Shield, Desert Storm through Iraq and in Afghanistan. And it culminated here in South Carolina at Fort Jackson, the largest and premier training center for the Army. I was the post command sergeant major there. Prior to that, I actually served as the commandant for the United States Army Drill Sergeant Academy. And so for some of your listeners, the significance about those two assignments is that the Drill Sergeant Academy for the Army is the only institution that trains all drill sergeants for the Army. That's every component: National Guard, Reserve, and active duty. We also had foreign trainers attend the Drill Sergeant Academy, and it is the one consolidated location. Whereas many years ago, some of your listeners might be familiar that we had several drill sergeant schools all over the country. For the reserve component as well as for the active component. And so they're all consolidated now. And I was the first commandant for the Drill Sergeant Academy when we went through that change from just being a schoolhouse to an actual institution of adult learning and utilizing the experiential learning model to train our non-commissioned officers to be drill sergeants. So from that assignment, I was chosen to be the post command sergeant major for Fort Jackson, basically have the opportunity to revolutionize the way that basic combat training was done. Again, taking our lessons learned from our different campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan and anticipating what we needed to do to develop and really create the future warrior that was going to enter into our ranks in the Army. So I had the fortunate opportunity to be at the developing base model for both the non-commissioned officer who was going to train the trainees and then the trainees. And I often joked about the question, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So it's like, which came first, the drill sergeant or the trainee? And so I had the opportunity to be on both ends of those spectrums. After retiring from the Army, I continued to stay in the Columbia, South Carolina area, even though I was born and raised in New York and spent a lot of my time in North Carolina because of my father. He was service oriented as well and served in the 82nd Airborne. And so I spent my high school years and my college years in North Carolina. I decided to hang my hat in South Carolina and stay here. And so it was about a year after my retirement, I decided to go ahead and participate in some more veteran-based focused programs that support the veteran community as well as the first responder community, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and dispatch, corrections as well. And so that's what I continue to do by giving back to the community that not only did I live in, but for a time I served. And so I'm continuing to serve as the director of the Warrior PATHH program here at the Big Red Barn Retreat in Blythewood, South Carolina. And I'll tell a little bit more about that later as we talk. But that's kind of me right there, in a nutshell. I've got a family here with me, my wife and my three children and my granddaughter also here in South Carolina.
Well, my goodness. Thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you've done. And I'm listening to all of this and it's like, that is a super resume. Like it is, it has to be about 30 pages long, just listening to all the things that you've accomplished. And I know that you've generated and created some amazing relationships, out of all of these things that you've done. And when we listen to it overall, it literally sounds like you have had a lifetime of being at the tip of the spear of change. I've listened to the transition going from the first commandant at the drill sergeant school there in Columbia. And I was part of that regime too. I remember Fort Leonard Wood and all these other training posts that existed, right? But being the tip of the spear for change has literally become a way of life for you, which actually takes us where we are today with what you do with the first responders. And I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I really want to dive into it because I think that's really the key about making, just being a part of what change looks like. A lot of us like to talk about it, have good conversations. Some of us complain about it, right? But you're not just complaining, you're actually doing something about it. So kind of give us a snapshot into what you're doing with the first responders there in Blythewood, South Carolina.
Yeah, so when we talk about supporting our people who serve us, right? I often call the people in the first responder community and our combat veterans and veteran community defenders, right? Well, defenders of our community, defenders of our nation. And the program that I run, Warrior PATHH, was specifically designed for combat veterans, post 9/11 combat veterans, in order to support their ability to really reintegrate back into society in a way that they could be productive and also continue to serve, right, and give back, because that's what servant leaders tend to do. So I got involved with this program in a similar way and really looking for an opportunity to give back. After I retired in October of 2018, I had no desire whatsoever to work. And I still, jokingly, I break out in hives if someone tells me about work, right? Because I have no desire to work. When I retired, I said I'm not rehired and I'm not going through a career change. Because typically, and I'll talk more about that, I think that's what one of the elements of our leaving the military creates, is a desire to still remain productive. And sometimes it's a necessity based on my bills and maybe some other requirements that I do have to continue to work, right? And so with that in mind, what happens is I think we get a mindset of really, it's not retirement. Like if somebody does a full 20+ year career in the military and they get out and they do something else in society and productive in that nature, it's really a career change that they've gone through. They've not retired if they're still working. And so my mindset was I planned on not working. And so I had that plan laid out. I was going to decompress and really just become Chris, right? And no longer Command Sergeant Major Christian. And so a month after I retired, unfortunately, one of my 4 children, Alexandra, took her life and committed suicide. And so it was from there that I began what I know now was the process of creating isolation. Something that I think that many people go through, and it doesn't matter if you wore a uniform or didn't. As humans, we find ourselves in dark places when things happen that we do not like, right? We're uncomfortable with. And so our way of coping or dealing with these things called life is different for different people. Some people go into some form of self-medication. And I don't just mean, alcohol or drugs. It could be an overindulgence in something, where they become super extreme and they're always running. And so this person is doing 5Ks, 10Ks, 20Ks, marathons. And so the question becomes, what are you running from? They may involve themselves in drinking and says, okay, what are you drinking away? So that's an overindulgence in something that's in the form of self-medication. I was doing that and creating isolation by diving into work, if you would. I might be working on the yard or calling myself binge watching a TV show or reading. And the reason I was creating this isolation was because I didn't have the answer on how I could help my family. You see, what I was dealing with was not understanding how to help them grieve. I had gone through the grieving process. I had done all those things that I taught people and shared with people and coached and mentored people for years as a leader, right? To your point, I was in the Army for about 1.5 years and I was already being considered for a non-commissioned officer. So out of those 33 years, 31 of those years, I was an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, making decisions, right? And helping fix problems. So here I was now at a point where I'd help people deal with suicide in the organization, at home, in their own family members. And yet I couldn't help my wife who gave birth to this child. Sure, I was a parent, but I didn't give birth to this beautiful woman and watch her leave us at 22 years old. So I didn't know how to help my wife deal with that. I didn't know how to help my oldest daughter, who was basically a surrogate parent because both my wife and I served in the military. She did 21 years and retired about 1 year before I did. So I couldn't help my oldest daughter understand how this person that she practically helped raise took her life and didn't have an understanding. Couldn't help my only son understand, who, in all intents and purposes, in my absence, was considered the man of the house and the big brother. And he couldn't understand what was going on, and I couldn't help him deal with it. And more importantly, Dwayne, what I could not help, the person that I could not help the most was her twin sister, who had been with her from birth through all of the times of their lives together. And at 22 years, she couldn't understand why this person who she felt closest to in the world took her life. So because of this, I found myself going to keynote speaking events, leadership seminars, where I was the trainer and helping, at the police academy, fire academies, doing all this great training and guest speaking. And what I will tell you is my arrival time got closer and closer to the time I was needed to speak, to the point where I might show up 2 minutes prior and shake everyone's hand, go to the podium or stand on the platform, conduct the training. And once I was done, I would ask for, where's the bathroom at? I need to use the toilet. And sometimes I would return and hover at the back door and slide out. And eventually it got to the point where I would ask for the toilet and head straight for the door and leave. And so I was creating isolation. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to deal with people. And I didn't realize it. I was what I would tell everyone, I was in a good place. So that brings me to my next point of change, right? I recognized that I was in need of still helping others, and that was going to help me in a way. But what I didn't realize was it was going to help me mask what I was dealing with. And so I had a conversation with someone who, the executive director of the Big Red Barn Retreat, and she was in a position to help veterans. And she was having a peer-to-peer coffee group where veterans were meeting once a week and really just getting together, some fellowship, some camaraderie, and more importantly, an opportunity to really just be in that tribal environment of like-minded people. And so she invited me out to help one of the veterans who was challenged by the VA system in the process. And she was hoping that I might be able to help him navigate his way through there. Anyway, long short of it, we had a conversation. And in that conversation, I really didn't help the individual too much. I just kind of pointed them in the right direction. But I think it was during that conversation that Sutton saw something in me and recognized that she wanted me to be part of a team and a vision that she had here at the Big Red Barn Retreat to help combat veterans and their families live in a world where they could actually thrive and not continue to suffer. And whether it was PTSD or just the day-to-day struggles of life, she recognized that her programs here at the Big Red Barn Retreat, whether it was equine therapy, whether it was art therapy, whether it was yoga, I-Rest Yoga Nidra, or any of the other programs that she was already offering, there was something missing, an element that could tie all of those things together, a philosophy, if you would. And so she has sought out a program called Warrior PATHH. And Warrior PATHH is a program that was integrated into creating a understanding of this thing we call post-traumatic growth. And I'll talk more about that here shortly. But she wanted to bring that program to South Carolina, specifically Blythewood, and to the Big Red Barn Retreat to help veterans and really thread together all of the other programs that she was providing veterans and their family members. And that program, being the Warrior PATHH program, required something, elements in order for it to be approved to be brought here. And one of those things was the people and somebody to lead the program. And so it was during that conversation that Sutton looked at me and thought that I would be the right fit to be the director of her program if she had the opportunity to bring it here. Well, after that, again, knowing what I told you in the beginning, I wasn't very interested in being in the work environment or in the workforce. But we sat down for lunch and I said I'd at least go hear her. Mind you, I said I would hear her. I didn't say I would listen. Because listening requires a process, a mental engagement. And so I said I would hear and allow my ears to take in what she was going to say. And so here's what I will tell you. We sat down at that table. And while I may not be very firm in religion, I do have a belief in higher power and the higher callings. We sat down at that table at lunch that day, and she shared with me this program and how it had 3 elements of it that was pretty important. Now, I need to go back in time a little bit. About a year prior to this conversation, I was just kind of messing around on the internet, like I was sharing with you a little while ago before we started. That I don't spend much time on Facebook or Instagram or any of the platforms, but I occasionally go out there. And this particular day, a year before our conversation, I came across one of those games that they have on Facebook where they have a square, and in that square are thousands of letters, and they say, look on here, and the first three words that pop out. And so on this particular day, the three words that popped out was purpose, breakthrough, and self-care. Now, mind you, this was before Sutton and I sat down for lunch that day, and she was interested in bringing me on board to be the director. So we're sitting down at lunch, and she's sharing with me this program called Struggle Well and Warrior PATHH, and Dr. Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, all these names that meant nothing to me. They was going in one ear and out the other.
Right.
And at a certain point, she shared with me this program that I want to bring to South Carolina to help veterans and eventually help first responders and their families thrive, is a breakthrough program that is alternative way of looking at helping our heroes. So now she had my attention because she said breakthrough. Who uses breakthrough in a conversation,
Right.
Especially today, because so many things have already been invented, have already been tried. So it's rare to hear that term breakthrough. Well, the next thing that she said to me was that this breakthrough program was a program that was designed in a 7-day intensive way of retraining our heroes, our warriors, and give them a better understanding of how they can provide themselves self-care. Okay, now she's got my attention, right? Self-care, not medication or seeing doctors or therapy, but now self-care. So these two words just popped up out of nowhere in this conversation that, like I said, a year prior, they meant nothing to me other than, oh, that was pretty cute that these were the three words that popped up on Facebook in my collection of these letters. And now she finishes it by saying, and at the end of the 7 days, they continue to do online continuance of education and remain connected to their tribe. They remain connected to the team that they do the training with, and it helps them redefine their purpose. I was done, right? I was like, okay, now you have my attention. And I recognized that in that conversation, that I was going to follow a path, no pun intended here on that, right? But I was going to follow a path that was going to lead me to what I had been doing for over 30 years. And that was helping to lead others into being better versions of themselves. Right. And I recognized that not only was it going to be a program that would help others, but in order for me to even understand it, or as a term that I like to use, overstand what the program offered, was I needed to attend it myself, and I did. And what I will share with you is that, and anyone listening or watching today, is that by me attending the Warrior PATHH program, it gave me exactly those three things that Sutton talked about. It helped me redefine my purpose. It was a breakthrough program that helped me to recognize that this process of teaching and coaching and mentoring, it does not have to end when you take off your uniform if you found yourself in a leadership position. And more importantly, at the end of the day, it's all about self and self-care. I am in no position to help anyone if I'm not helping myself. And whether I was forged to be a leader, born to be a leader, became a leader, it does not matter. If you have served our country, if you have served our community in any capacity, no matter how long or short that time period has been, you have placed yourself and sacrificed yourself in a way that's immeasurable, right? Because less than 1% of the rest of our nation will answer that call to those who are screaming out in help. That will run towards the sounds of gunfire, or that will put on a uniform knowing that at some point that the country may call upon them to do something in defense of a piece of paper, right? Yeah. Of a notion, of an idea, right? Not a king, not a queen, or some potentate. We are defending something that you can't even put your hands around, but when you feel it, you know exactly what that is, and that is the freedom to get up and do something and serve or give back or just live the life that you deserve. And so, with all of that being said, once I attended the program, I knew that there was going to be somebody that would walk through the door and attend the program that I was going to run. And so, again, forgive me with me running on with my response, but that all came to a head again once we started our first program in 2019. In October of 2019, we began doing our own training here in Blythewood, South Carolina, running the Warrior PATHH program. And it's been nothing but joy for me. And I don't say happiness, right? Because happiness is something that brings a smile to my face that has happened, right? That's why happiness. But joy is something here, right? That's that sweet spot that I think in human nature, we seek joy and to feel good about the things that we're either doing or that we're part of. And that's what this Warrior PATHH program has brought to our state and our community of defenders, right? For veterans and first responders. So anyway, I can keep going on, man. Ask me some more questions, please.
Listen. I'm loving it. I am engaged because you had me at go. I'm gonna be honest with you. Just like she had you at the conversation, you had me at go. When you first and foremost, let me say condolences to you and your family, because most people cannot relate to the pain that you guys had to endure in losing a child. So I would be just remiss if I did not say that before I address anything else you said. Because I can only imagine how difficult that was. I lost a good friend of mine when I was in Iraq, and that was very difficult for me, but it cannot relate to what you just explained to all of us. So again, my condolences and prayer and continual progression to the both of you. My pleasure. In fact, not just to both of you and your wife, but to all of you, your wife and all of your children, because that is a very difficult scenario to have to deal with. And what I will add to the backside of that, deal with it well you are, sir. I'm totally wrapped up into all that you're sharing right now, because I'm listening to your transition, right? Your progression as you continue to develop self. And I'm loving it because you talked about isolating. And I don't think we realize that we do that in the midst of doing it. We'll withdraw ourselves from friends, we'll withdraw ourselves from other things, and we'll engulf into something thinking it's just a pattern of what we're doing, not even realizing that isolationism is only continuing to exacerbate the problem, to where we are social creatures. We are designed to intermingle and relate to others and conversate and share. That's what it is. And share. And I promise you, I just had this conversation today. We're supposed to share the things that we go through. Everyone goes through something, regardless of what it looks like. And here's the deal. What I tend to do, and I'm just going to talk about me, what I tend to do is overemphasize the situation, right? But in the midst of me overemphasizing the situation, I don't add the necessary value to the learning that takes place for me in the situation. Therefore, what I end up doing on the backside is projecting the situation on people, not helping people with the lessons that I learned.